different vibe of video this week. I'm going to ask you to hit like now because you probably won't like me by the end of this. So what I wanted to talk about today was all of the watch brands that we've not been able to help. And obviously we run a marketing business that works with watch brands, and we don't succeed with all of them. And there's reasons behind that, and believe it or not, some of them are actually not our fault. And I'm going to go into that today. I'm going to go into why some watch brands actually go out of business, and the key things that I've seen over the years. I've been doing this for watch brands for 6 years now, and I thought I'd explain exactly why they fail. Now, there's many reasons, and there's many reasons that lie with the actual person running the brand, running the business. When you're trying to build a business, you need to be a certain type of person. And there is many brands out there, many watch brands specifically, that run the brand as though they are a enthusiast, if that makes sense. Now, that might seem strange, but if you're a watch enthusiast, there's this mindset where you're looking for the best value for money, and that just doesn't work when you're trying to build a profitable or commercially viable watch business. And what we see with these brands that used to come and work with us is they would run ads, or we would set up ads for them. We'd set up email marketing. We'd do all the research that we'd usually do with a brand, and we would run the ads. And about a month or 2 months in, we'd be getting a ROAS of maybe like 2.5 early stages, for example, which means for every dollar they put into advertising, they got $2.50 back. And they were losing money, and they couldn't figure out why. And it turns out it's because they were enthusiast-led brands, and that sounds really strange and vague, but the reason behind that was they were basically looking at like the movement. So a Miyota movement, for example, they would refuse to sell it any higher than, a couple $100 or $500, whatever it might be. And they thought that obviously because they were marketing to enthusiasts would want to pay that. And it gave them a sort of small-minded mindset. So they had these watches that they were selling at barely any profit. They were making maybe like $50 to $100 per sale. And that was before there was marketing cost. So they were relying on like Facebook groups like the League of Microbrands and so on to sell a run of 300 watches, for example. But the minute they had to scale, they wanted to do bigger numbers, they wanted to grow as a brand, they had to run ads, but they couldn't do it profitably. And what always comes back to us, unfortunately, as an advertising agency, is brands like that will try and blame us for that. But we're realistic from the start about the sort of costs they can expect, and they just couldn't make the unit economics work. And to this day, those brands now are still running. They're still run by one person. They're still making the same money. They've never increased their price. They scrape by. The owners have full-time jobs. Like, that's just the way. It's a hobby. They're not running a business, and they have this really sort of annoying thing in their head where they blame everyone but themselves for that. And it's something we see like time and time again. And a lot of people think when you want to work with us, if you own a watch brand, by the way, we can help you grow. You can click the link in the description to go over to our website, look at some of our testimonials. But we don't work with everyone. And a lot of watch brands see our advertising, whatever, and assume we'll just take on any client we can so that we can charge you money, charge you a retainer. But that's just not the case. Maybe 6 years ago when I was getting started, happily work with any brand and help them grow. But we kind of know what we're looking for now when it comes to brands we want to partner with. And it is not enthusiast-led brands because they cannot scale. They try everything. They try to bring out like higher priced watches, for example, and it never works. Like the customers that they've cultivated are enthusiasts, and they go, I'm not paying that for that movement, it's overpriced for me, blah 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 blah, and they just never make any money. If you own a brand like that though, and you want to change, you want to turn the tide, there is things you can do. You need to completely get rid of your customer base and stop trying to pander to them. That's number one thing. That will result in like no revenue for you for a while. And you need to start building a story and positioning your brand at the level it wants to be positioned at. So when you look at brands that did well, or brands that have gone from nothing to big brands, those brands typically, when you look at the watch that they're selling, the average customer doesn't look at that watch and go, what movement is that? Let me check how much that movement costs on AliExpress and see if this is worthwhile. Or, that's just not how the typical customer interacts, but it is how the enthusiast interacts. So you need to just stop catering to those people, and that will save you thousands. Like, there's a lot of YouTubers or sort of PR press that cater solely to enthusiasts who are just never going to buy from you if you sell a watch at a healthy markup for your business. So there's no point spending money getting exposure there, because you're going to attract the wrong people. And it's just one of those things I wanted to reflect on in this week's video, to be honest, because we see it time and time again, right? And now the thing that I've learned from this is, when a watch brand like books a call with us or wants to, go over something, we've had to put barriers in place to stop watch brands that we just can't help. One of the things we do, for example, is we say you have to be making over $10,000 a month in revenue before we speak to you. And that sounds really harsh. Like, there is brands we see or people I meet that are below that, but they're doing everything right, and we will help them on the off occasion. But typically we say you have to be doing $10,000 a month in watch sales from your website, direct consumer, before we can sort of entertain having a call with you. And the reason for that is simple. First of all, we have fees. Second of all, you need to be willing to spend at least $2,500–3,000 a month on paid advertising for our work to make any substantial difference to your brand. And there's many other reasons, but it's actually to deter enthusiast-led brands. And that sounds really bad, because I collect microbrands myself. I love some of these brands. I mean, the enthusiast-led brands are the guys that change the industry. They push the envelope forward. They do things for the watch industry that I think they're kind of like the unsung heroes, and they have a real problem with pricing and market positioning, everything like that. And it's just, it causes such a problem even for us as an agency. And that's why, like, we can't work with them, because we run ads, we get the ROAS that we say we're going to aim to get in the first 2 months, but it's just the unit economics. By the time they do the maths, they're losing money. They need to pay up front for another batch of watches to be made. Like, it just doesn't work. The business model does not work. So if you're watching this, you run an enthusiast-led brand that's, all about the price of the movement, the case finishing. It's like, amazing value for money. If that's your line, you can scale, but the best way to do it for you is organically, is with Instagram, maybe YouTube reviews if you can afford to pay for some of them. That sort of stuff. Like, you're not going to scale to be a big enterprise. If you look at brands like even Christopher Ward, for example, they, in my opinion, were a sort of micro brand, right? They're now a legacy micro brand. Some would say they just aren't in that category anymore at all. But they always catered to enthusiasts. And I can tell you for a fact, they realized that it just wasn't going to be financially viable. So they started, obviously, they increased their price, they worked on their brand positioning, and then they brought out, obviously, relatively recently, watches like the Bel Canto to show that they're a serious watchmaker, to show that they are pushing the envelope and that they can demand these higher prices from customers because of everything they're doing, because of their marketing, market positioning, right? So they are able to now scale with paid ads, because the profit margin is there. But if they just stayed as like one group of guys that started a brand and they were just keeping everything, in-house, it was all like the best value for money possible. Like, we're talking, a tiny profit margin on each watch, maybe 15%, then you're just not going to scale. And there is brands that actually do that. Now, I can tell you for a fact, if this helps, the average watch brand runs at a 2 to 6x markup. Most of the brands we work with run at a 5 and 6x markup. And that allows, you think, God, that's crazy. But like, there's still almost no profit left by the time you scale properly. And they rely on constantly acquiring new customers, repeat customers. So a lot of work goes into respecting the customer and storytelling and making new watches that these customers and previous customers, new customers are going to love, and watches that are going to open them up to new markets, new audiences, new countries, nations, that sort of thing, right? So it's an important one to consider. But that's, I just wanted to talk about that today because it's just one of these things that drives me absolutely nuts. When I see brands that say, Facebook ads doesn't work for us, we've tried it. It's just like, Facebook ads works for everyone. You literally are putting your product in front of people who might buy it and might not. And you have to, let's say, advertise to 1,000 people to maybe get one sale, as an example, right? That's all you have to do. But if it's going to cost you a certain amount to get to those 1,000 people to get that one sale, and your profit margin is like tiny, then it's not viable for you. It's not the agency's fault. It's not our fault. Like, before we go into an agreement with a watch brand, we will figure out what their break-even ROAS has to be. In the first call, when you book a call on the website, we will ask you that, because we need to know, like, is this viable for us? And we work in such a small industry that so many of our clients actually do come from word of mouth, or they see an advert for us and then they reach out to another brand we work with to sort of verify that we're the real deal, I guess. And you need to consider pricing, profit margins to actually work with us or even succeed in this market. I mean, when you go on the League of Microbrands on Facebook, there's a new brand, like maybe 2 new brands a week that I see posting, right, about a Kickstarter or a new watch they're working on. And I mean, I'm now at the point where I can see that brand and I know if they're going to do well or not, just based on the sort of logo on the dial, right? Because I've just seen so many brands now. We've worked with so many brands now. But yeah, that's what I want to talk about today. Really, it comes down to unit economics and who you cater to. And you can see this, like every micro brand that's enthusiast based, they either started with an audience, like they had a big email list for some reason, or like they're ran by someone who's an influencer, or like, something like that. They are able to be profitable and charge good prices because they've put time into that sort of organic audience that's going to buy. But when it comes to running ads, struggle, always a struggle. So they're kind of capped. They need to grow their other sort of, wherever they got their audience from, they need to grow that channel to make more money. But then you look at those brands as they grow, just like Christopher Ward, in my opinion, and you see them start to invest in website, invest in storytelling, invest in like good ads and branding, and then they slowly put up their price. And that is how like they scale. It's not because they're trying to pump the customer, right, or rip you off. It's because they need to run ads. They need to hire staff to pack watches. The owner doesn't have time to do that now. And all of that has such a financial impact on the bottom line. So they need to increase their prices to be able to run ads, to be able to create cool new watches that you're going to love. And it's something watch brands just don't consider. So if you own your brand, you're a one-man band, you don't have a team yet, you need to heavily consider your storytelling, your position, and your pricing. Because if you want to run ads, like we've had so many calls with brands that really want to work with us, and we have to say no. And it's not because I don't want the money. Of course, I would love every watch brand to pay me money. It's because it's just not going to work. And I can't afford that reputational damage. Maybe I could years ago when I was starting out, but we just can't anymore. It's a waste of our time. It's a waste of your time. You're going to spend, $6,000 on ads and have no money left to show for it and like a couple watch sales. It's just not worth it. Because your unit economics are wrong. So do some time figuring out the total profit margin of your watches once it's shipped and arrived at the customer, and see what your margin actually is and what your cost per purchase would have to be to even break even. And then think in your head, let's say you have $100 cost per purchase, that's what you need. First of all, that's not enough. Second of all, if you had to hire staff as you scaled, how are you going to do that? Are you going to get to a volume of the ads where you can sort of lower increase your orders with your manufacturer, or save money there to give yourself more margin to hire people? Like, these are all the things you need to consider as a watch brand. So yeah, that's all for today. So it's a weird one. Welcome to my sofa. I just wanted to discuss it and throw that out there. If you enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe. If you are owning a watch brand If you want to grow or you want to just have a call with me, you're more than welcome to, as long as you're earning above $10,000 a month. You can click the link in the description of this video and book a call. It's directly with me, not a salesperson, and we will have a chat. We'll see what your viable next steps are, and we can put a project together on the call and see if it's something you want to go ahead with. If not, if you just need advice, then drop a comment below this video. I will see you next week in the next one. Bye-bye.